The day I moved back into my house was supposed to be peaceful. I had just returned from a 6-month assignment out of state, looking forward to some quiet time, a few barbecues, and maybe a little fishing at the nearby pond. The neighborhood was part of a small Hoa community, the kind that prided itself on being exclusive but really just meant people were nosy and rules were ridiculous. I'd owned my home for years, long before the Hoa was even formed, and as a law enforcement officer, I was used to dealing with people who liked to think they had authority they didn't. Still, I wasn't prepared for the storm that was about to hit me. One named Karen. I'd just parked my truck in the driveway, unloaded a few boxes, and started trimming some overgrown branches near the fence when I heard the sound of high heels clicking down the sidewalk. I looked up and saw a woman marching toward me like she owned the street. She was wearing oversized sunglasses, a floral blouse, and had that unmistakable look of self-importance. "Excuse me," she barked before she was even close. "You can't be here." I turned around, unsure if she was talking to me or someone else. "Come again?" I asked. "This property belongs to the Smiths," she said, pointing toward my house. "They moved out months ago." I wiped my hands on my jeans and tried not to laugh. "Ma'am, I'm the owner. Name's Mark Daniels. I've lived here for over 10 years. She squinted, clearly not believing me. "Impossible. I'm the Hoa president. I know every homeowner here, and your name isn't on our list." That was my first red flag. "Well, Karen," I said, glancing at the name embroidered on her badge, "your list might need updating." She crossed her arms. "You need to leave immediately, or I'll call the police for trespassing." I stared at her for a second, wondering if she was serious. "You're going to call the police on the homeowner? Be my guest." She narrowed her eyes and took out her phone like it was a weapon. "Don't think I want to," she snapped. I shrugged and went back to trimming branches. I'd dealt with worse at work, and I figured she'd leave after realizing she couldn't intimidate me. 15 minutes later, I was back in the garage unpacking when I heard the unmistakable sound of sirens. My stomach dropped, not because I was worried, but because I couldn't believe she'd actually done it. I stepped outside, and sure enough, 2 patrol cars were pulling up in front of my house. Karen stood triumphantly on the curb, pointing at me like she'd just solved a crime. One of the officers, a younger guy I actually recognized, got out of the car. Hey, Mark," he said, looking confused. "Karen here says someone's trespassing." I gave him a half smile. "Yeah, she's talking about me." The officer glanced between us. "You live here, right?" I nodded. "Got the deed and ID inside if you need proof." Karen's face twisted with confusion. "Wait, you know him?" the officer chuckled. "Yeah, he's one of ours." Her mouth fell open, but before she could say anything, I pulled out my wallet and flashed my badge. "Detective Mark Daniels, County Sheriff's Office," I said calmly. Karen's eyes went wide, her confidence evaporating instantly. "Why, you're a police officer," she stammered. "That's right," I said. "And since you just filed a false report and wasted department resources, you might want to be careful what you say next." The color drained from her face. I didn't mean you called 911, I interrupted, keeping my tone firm but professional. "You claimed there was a trespasser when all you had to do was check your records. That's a misuse of emergency services." She started to backpedal, stammering something about a misunderstanding. The younger officer looked at her, clearly annoyed. "Ma'am, Did you even verify ownership before calling? She folded her arms, trying to regain control. He didn't look like he belonged here. There's been a lot of break-ins lately. I couldn't help but laugh. Break-ins, Karen? This neighborhood has cameras on every corner, and I helped install them 3 years ago. Her lips pressed into a thin line, and she muttered something under her breath. The second officer, a veteran I'd worked with before, approached me quietly. "You want to press for false reporting?" he asked. I glanced at Karen, who was now visibly shaking. "Not this time," I said. "But I do want a formal record of this incident. Just in case she tries something again." The officers nodded and began taking notes while Karen fidgeted, her composure completely shattered. She tried to speak again, her voice trembling. "I was just trying to protect the neighborhood. I didn't know." I cut her off. "You didn't know because you didn't bother to ask. You assumed, and you called 911 to make yourself feel powerful." Her jaw tightened, but she didn't respond. When the officers finished their report, one of them turned to me. "We'll file this as a warning, Mark. She'll get a visit from the HOA board about it, too." I thanked them, and as they left, Karen stood frozen in place, clutching her phone like a lifeline. I walked over to her and said quietly, "You might want to think twice before trying to bully people. Next time, it could cost you a lot more than embarrassment." She glared at me, but there was no fire left in her. She turned and walked off without another word. I went back inside, shaking my head at how absurd the whole thing had been. I'd handled everything from robbery investigations to domestic disputes, but never thought I'd have to deal with a neighbor trying to evict me from my own home. Later that night, I sat on the porch, sipping a beer, watching the sun set over the cul-de-sac. A few neighbors passed by, waving or stopping to say welcome back. Apparently, word had spread fast. Most of them were apologetic, embarrassed that their HOA president had taken things that far. Over the next few days, Karen tried to save face. I saw her once or twice walking her dog, avoiding eye contact every time she passed my house. The HOA even sent out a formal apology letter, explaining that the incident was a misunderstanding and that new verification procedures would be implemented before future reports. That was their polite way of saying Karen had been warned. I didn't hold a grudge, but I made sure to keep my cameras rolling and my paperwork in order. Then, a week later, I got a knock on my door. It was Karen. She stood there, clutching a small box of cookies, looking like she'd been forced into the situation. "I wanted to apologize," she said stiffly. "For the other day. I overreacted." I raised an eyebrow. "You think?" she sighed. "I'm just not used to new people around here. I was trying to do my job." I nodded slowly. "I get it. But next time, maybe start with a question instead of a 911 call." She nodded, mumbled a half-hearted apology, and left. As she walked away, I couldn't help but chuckle. People like her always think they're in control until they meet someone who actually has authority. And while I didn't take joy in embarrassing her, I did hope she learned a valuable lesson. Power doesn't come from yelling the loudest, it comes from knowing the truth. The funny thing was, after that day, she never bothered me again. Every time she saw me mowing the lawn or washing my truck, she'd turn and go the other way. Peace had finally returned to the neighborhood. But deep down, I knew this wouldn't be the last time someone like Karen tried to test me. The difference was, next time, I'd already have my badge ready. The week after Karen's 911 stunt, things in the neighborhood started to feel normal again, or at least as normal as they could with her living 2 houses down. Most of the other residents avoided bringing it up, though a few gave me those awkward half smiles that said they'd heard the whole story. I didn't care much about gossip, but I could tell Karen was embarrassed. She'd gone from strutting around like she owned the place to ducking behind her hedges whenever I walked by. I thought maybe that was the end of it, that she'd learned her lesson. But I should ve known better. People like her don't back down, they regroup and come back twice as petty. It started with little things. One morning, I found a notice taped to my mailbox from the HOA, warning me about unauthorized exterior modifications. The modification in question, a wind chime I'd hung on my porch years ago. The same one that had survived 3 presidents before her. Then came another warning, this time for improper vehicle storage, referring to my truck parked in my own driveway. Each letter was signed on behalf of the HOA, but I knew exactly whose handiwork it was. I called the HOA office, and the secretary sighed before I could even finish explaining. "Let me guess," she said. Karen again apparently. She'd been filing complaints under her old title, pretending she still had authority. The HOA president, a calm, level-headed guy named Ron, told me they were dealing with it internally. He apologized profusely and assured me those notices would be voided. I told him I appreciated it, but something in my gut told me this wasn't over. Karen wasn't just angry, she was obsessed with proving she was right, even if it meant twisting the rules to fit her fantasy of control. That became clearer a few days later when I came home from a night shift and found a small crowd gathered near my driveway. At first, I thought maybe there'd been another neighborhood meeting, but when I walked closer, I saw a bright orange sticker plastered on my mailbox. Property in violation pending review. I tore it off immediately, my patience thinning. Karen was standing across the street with her arms folded, pretending to chat with one of the neighbors but glancing over every few seconds with that smug look she wore so well. I walked straight toward her. "Care to explain why there's an HOA violation notice on my mailbox again?" I asked. She smirked. "Rules are rules. If you can't follow them, maybe you don't belong in this community." Her tone dripped with arrogance. I kept my voice even. "I don't think the rules say you get to play pretend president after being voted out." She gave a tight smile. "I may not be president, but I still care about maintaining standards. Some of us actually take pride in our neighborhood." I laughed under my breath. "Standards? You mean the kind where you harass your neighbors and waste police resources?" Her jaw tightened. "You humiliated me. You think you can waltz in here, flash your badge, and act like you're above everyone else? Not in my neighborhood." That line, "my neighborhood," was what broke my restraint. "Karen," I said slowly, "you don't own this place. You don't run this HOA. And if you keep tampering with my property, you'll be dealing with more than a warning next time." Her eyes narrowed, and she said coldly, "We'll see about that." She turned on her heel and stormed off, her little dog trotting behind her. The next morning, I filed a formal harassment complaint with the HOA board, attaching photos of the notices and timestamps from my security cameras. Ron called me later that afternoon, clearly frustrated. "She's been warned twice already," he said. "If she keeps this up, the board can take disciplinary action." I thanked him, though I doubted that would stop her. Karen wasn't afraid of consequences, she was fueled by the attention. And when people like her felt powerless, they got creative. A few nights later, I caught her on my security feed again, standing by my driveway, taking pictures of my house. It was 11:30 at night. I stepped outside, flashlight in hand, and called out, "Karen, you might want to stop before I start thinking this is stalking." She flinched, clearly not expecting me to be awake. "I'm documenting violations," she snapped. "Your porch light is too bright, and your fence doesn't match the Hoa color palette." I couldn't help but laugh. "You're trespassing." "Again." She lifted her chin. "I'm on public property." I took a step closer, lowering my voice. "You're on thin ice. And next time, you're not getting a warning, you're getting cuffs." She hesitated for a moment, then turned and walked away without another word. The following day, the Hoa board finally had enough. Ron showed up at my house with 2 other members, carrying a folder full of paperwork. "We've officially issued a cease and desist against her," he said. "If she contacts you or your property again, we'll support legal action." That was a relief, but I still wasn't convinced she'd stop. Sure enough, 2 days later, I got a call from the county office saying someone had reported my property for unauthorized water usage. I nearly laughed out loud. She'd actually tried to claim I was stealing water to fill my own backyard fountain. The inspector who showed up recognized me immediately and rolled his eyes. "Karen again?" he asked. I nodded. "You know it?" At that point, I realized Karen wasn't just angry, she was unraveling. Her sense of power had been her entire identity, and now that it was gone, she was grasping at anything to feel in control again. I decided to handle things differently. Instead of reacting, I documented everything. Every false report, every late-night photo session, every petty notice, I kept it all organized in a file. When I finally had enough evidence, I brought it to the county magistrate's office. The clerk knew exactly who I was talking about before I even said her name. Apparently, mine wasn't the first complaint they'd received about her antics. A week later, Karen got served with an official harassment warning, not from me, but from the county itself. The look on her face when the deputy handed her the papers was priceless. I didn't need to say a word. From that day on, she stopped filing complaints, stopped walking her dog near my house, and stopped acting like she was the sheriff of suburbia. The silence that followed was glorious. I could finally mow my lawn, park my truck, and sit on my porch without wondering what nonsense she'd come up with next. Funny thing was, some of the neighbors actually came by to thank me. Turns out, I wasn't the only one she'd been targeting. She'd fined people for bird feeders, lawn ornaments, even Halloween decorations. She'd ruled over the Hoa like a dictator, and now that she'd been put in her place, the neighborhood felt free again. One neighbor, an older gentleman named Frank, said with a chuckle, "You did what we all wanted to do years ago." I grinned. Guess it just took someone with a badge. As the weeks went by, Karen's presence faded. She stopped showing up to meetings, stopped sending out passive-aggressive emails, and for the first time in a long while, peace settled over the community. I still caught her watching me from her window sometimes, that mix of bitterness and defeat written all over her face, but I didn't mind. I'd done my part, and she knew it. The funny part, despite everything, I didn't hate her. I pitied her. She'd built her whole life around control, and when that crumbled, she had nothing left. But I wasn't going to let her rebuild it at my expense. The Hoa might have rules, but even rules need someone to enforce them fairly, and this time, I made sure Karen finally understood what that really meant. After weeks of uneasy calm, I thought Karen had finally given up. The complaints stopped, the phone calls from the Hoa stopped, and for the first time since moving in, I could sit on my porch without glancing over my shoulder. I let myself believe she'd moved on. Maybe she'd found some new hobby, or maybe she'd just realized she couldn't win. But peace never lasts long when someone like Karen is involved. One evening, as I was cleaning up after dinner, I heard voices outside, angry ones. I stepped out to find two police officers standing at the edge of my driveway, talking to Karen. She was gesturing wildly toward my house, her words sharp and theatrical even from a distance. When the officers noticed me, one of them turned and said, "Sir, we received a call about a possible trespassing situation. Are you the homeowner?" I almost laughed. "I'm the owner, yes," I said calmly. "What's this about?" Before the officer could answer, Karen jumped in. "He doesn't live here," she snapped. "He's squatting. The real owner left months ago, and this man just moved in pretending to be him." Her tone was hysterical, like she was auditioning for a soap opera. The younger officer looked confused, glancing at his partner, who raised an eyebrow. "Ma'am," he said slowly, "do you have any proof of that?" Karen crossed her arms. "The Hoa told me. I was president for 5 years. I know every resident here. This man just appeared out of nowhere." I took a deep breath, reached into my pocket, and pulled out my wallet. "Officers," I said, "before we waste any more time, you should probably take a look at this." I flipped open the badge that had been with me for over a decade. The older officer's posture shifted instantly, respectful, alert. Karen's smug expression froze, her eyes darting between my badge and my face. You're a cop," she stammered. I nodded. "Detective, actually. And yes, this is my property. I can show you the deed, the mortgage statements, or whatever else you need." The officer shook his head slightly, suppressing a smile. "That won't be necessary, sir. I think we can clear this up." He turned to Karen. "Ma'am, it appears there's been a misunderstanding." Karen's face went pale, but she wasn't ready to surrender. "No. This is wrong. He's lying. He's using a fake badge or something. You have to arrest him." Her voice grew shriller with every word. The younger officer stepped forward, trying to calm her down. "Ma'am, please," but she wasn't having it. "You don't understand," she snapped, pointing at me. "He's dangerous. He threatened me before." "That did it?" The older officer straightened up. "Ma'am, I need you to stop making accusations unless you have evidence. If this continues, you could be charged for filing a false report." Her jaw dropped. "You can't talk to me like that. I'm a respected member of this community." I couldn't resist. "You were," I said evenly. "Until everyone realized you're the problem." Her eyes burned with hatred. "You think you're untouchable because you have a badge," she hissed. "But this isn't over." I looked at the officers, who were clearly tired of the circus. "Officers, I think she's had enough excitement for one night," I said. The senior officer nodded. "Agreed. Ma'am, I'm going to ask you to go home. Right now." She sputtered, but when he added, "Or we can take you down to the station," she finally turned and stormed off, muttering under her breath. Once she was gone, the younger cop sighed. "Does this happen often?" I chuckled. "With her more than I'd like to admit." He shook his head. "Well, if she calls again, just reference this report number. We'll make sure it doesn't waste our time." I thanked them, and they left, their patrol car's red and blue lights fading down the street. For a while, I stood there in the quiet, the adrenaline still buzzing in my veins. I dealt with a lot of people in my career, liars, manipulators, con artists, but something about Karen was different. She didn't just want control, she wanted validation. She wanted the world to see her as the hero in her own story, even if she had to destroy someone else to make it happen. The next day, the HOA held an emergency meeting. Ron, the president, called me personally to ask if I'd attend. When I walked in, every seat was full. Karen sat in the back, her arms crossed, glaring daggers at me. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut. Ron cleared his throat. "We're here to discuss recent incidents involving harassment, false reporting, and abuse of HOA representation," he began. "Certain individuals have been using the HOA name to justify personal vendettas." His eyes flicked toward Karen. She shifted uncomfortably. He continued, "We've reviewed the complaints, the police reports, and the security footage provided by Detective Miles." He nodded at me. "And the board has voted unanimously to remove Ms. Karen Holt from any and all HOA involvement. Effective immediately." A murmur rippled through the room. Karen shot to her feet. "You can't do this. I built this HOA. None of you would even have your homes if it weren't for me." Ron stayed calm. "Karen, please sit down." She refused. "He's manipulating you all. He's dangerous." She yelled, pointing at me again. "He's turning this place against me." Ron sighed. "Karen, enough. You've harassed multiple residents, filed false police reports, and disrupted every attempt at peace in this neighborhood. It's over." The security officer standing by the door stepped forward slightly, and that was the final cue. Karen's voice cracked as she shouted, "This isn't over. You'll regret this." Then she grabbed her bag and stormed out, slamming the door behind her. For a moment, the room was silent. Then someone started clapping. It spread quickly until nearly everyone was applauding. I felt a strange mix of relief and pity. It wasn't victory, I felt it was closure. The constant tension that had poisoned the neighborhood for months finally lifted. People began talking freely again, laughing even. Ron patted me on the shoulder. "You handled that better than anyone else could, he said. I smiled. "Just doing my job." Over the next few weeks, things truly changed. The HOA stopped acting like a mini police force and started focusing on what it was supposed to: maintenance, events, and community support. Neighbors who used to avoid each other started chatting again. Kids played by the street without anyone being scolded for noise violations. The entire place felt alive again. As for Karen, she kept to herself. Her blinds were always drawn, her car rarely moved, and the few times I saw her, she wouldn't even look my way. I didn't rub it in, I didn't need to. The truth was enough. One afternoon, a new neighbor moved into the house across from hers. As I helped him unload some boxes, he asked, "So what's the deal with the lady over there? She seems intense." I laughed softly. "Let's just say she used to run the neighborhood, and now she doesn't." He grinned. "Got it? I'll stay out of her way." I nodded. "That's the smart move." That night, as I sat on my porch watching the sunset fade over the rooftops, I thought about how ridiculous the whole ordeal had been. All that chaos, all that drama, just because one person couldn't let go of control. It made me realize how fragile peace can be and how important it is to stand your ground when someone tries to take it away. I didn't move into that neighborhood to make enemies. I just wanted a quiet life. But sometimes, life throws you a storm before you get to the calm. Karen had been that storm. And now, as I watched the reflection of the streetlights shimmer across my lawn, I smiled. The storm had finally passed and I still had my home, my badge, and my peace intact.